This is season 4, and I am on a mission to help creatives become the most loved versions of themselves. I want to help you step into health in every single area of your life and pursue the authentic creative expression that you feel called to and that only you can. The world feels crazy right now, and we need healthy creatives more than ever. So let's get into it. I'm Courtney Lancaster, and this is the Heal Create Podcast. Welcome to another episode of the Heal Create Podcast. I was going to try and quantify this episode, and this is how it sounds. This is episode 3 of season 4 of the 9-month journey to your most loved self. It's a little, I probably could have done that differently, but that's where we're at. And this is week 3 of the first month, more numbers, of our 9-month journey towards your most loved self. And the first month, we are focusing on the theme of vision, having a vision for your life. Now, I work with creative people. I work with mostly overly cautious, mostly religious raised, overly cautious, creative people. Kids, I call them kids because they're usually in their 20s and 30s. I do have some clients in their 40s and 50s as well. But a lot of people that find me are younger than I am. I'm in my 40s. And I think that what makes it such a beautiful relationship, a beautiful niche, is that I fully understand what it's like to be programmed at a cellular level to not trust yourself, which is the message that religion hands so many of us. And I had something come up recently that I thought was a perfect example of this. I was talking on my stories about, I was kind of joking about being a worship leader that believes in manifestation. Not even, I kind of forget sometimes some of the trigger words that Christians have around designing your own life and the fear around New Age, beliefs. And I got some feedback on that. That was concerned, and not much, but just a couple of people that are staying in my community, and I so appreciate their voices. And there is a lot of caution there, and they just voiced it. And I wanted to talk about manifestation. I wanted to talk about what that is and why being afraid of that word actually is one of the many signs that we are actually probably subconsciously afraid to set up a vision for our life, to design our life, which is, I believe, the right of every well-loved child of God, just like it is the right of my own children to one day decide what they want to do with their lives and live their lives, knowing that they are so loved and supported and always connected to me. I always want to say too that I'm not trying to be whoever anyone wants me to be in order to keep you in my community. If I'm not for you, that is perfectly fine. There's actually so many great, more conservative, maybe you're looking for Bible teachers, and I just absolutely bless you to go find them because there's so many of them. But I am not of that variety, although I am a Christian, I'm a worship leader, I do go to church. We have walked through a lot of deconstruction and reconstruction. And I think this beautiful, mysterious Christian tradition is, it's my home. And this is where we are, this very gray space of belonging to this, like I said, this Christian tradition, and also knowing that there are many tricky things and things that lots of different people feel permission around, or don't feel permission around, or feel scared about, or feel cautious about, or maybe just curious about. And so I wanted to talk about specifically this idea of manifestation and where it came from, why there's so much caution around it. Because at the root of it, to manifest is to bring something into reality that wasn't in reality. Something that you to manifest literally means to create something, to or to cause something to happen, or to have something to happen. And I think there was a New Age movement, which makes people a lot of people nervous around, back in the day, it was The Secret, I think it was called. It was this kind of more non-denominational spiritual idea that you could like create or cause things to happen using only your thoughts. And I think a lot of the fear around it from Christians, and this is always the fear, is that we're trying to do something outside of God, that we are trying to find a way to take power into our own hands and create something like without God in our own flesh. I don't even, at this point in my life, I can't even remember ever being afraid of that. Like, we are so obviously intricately intertwined with God. He knit us together in our mother's womb, and we are creations of his. And so I can't imagine even wanting to think that we are not connected to a source of love. It doesn't clock with me. And not only because I choose to practice, Christianity, because I love God and Jesus and I love so many things about it, but just because even when you look at childhood development, like children from birth were made to be in connection. And, I always love the message of Jesus that he is like, you guys, I am so connected to the voice of God, so connected to God. I call him dad. I call him daddy. And you have the opportunity at any age to be just as loved as I am and and I'm only the first among many brothers and sisters. And I just think that makes absolute total sense to me. It makes sense to me based, on this side of my own trauma therapy, on the just vast amount of trauma science showing how important it is to reconstruct your own and heal your own childhood story if it's caused you so many unhelpful beliefs and patterns, and to break those patterns. And it all comes down to reworking and healing your identity as a well-loved child. And a well-loved child of God knows how resourced they are, and they feel the freedom to trust themselves. This is childhood development science. This is not like my opinion. They grow up to be adults that trust themselves and that trust what lights them up, and that know their purpose, know their identity, and feel safe to go on rabbit trails of things that they're interested in and curious about, to see where that leads them and to see what might come of that. And these are all things that I think what religion can do is it can take the place of feeling connected to God, because religion, I'm talking about just religion, not any one religion, just religious as a substitute for relationship. What it can do is it will give you everything that a good parent would give you with no connection. It will give you the rules not to break. It will give you the boundaries. It will give you the rituals. It will promise a community, as long as you believe the same thing as everyone else believes. It gives you everything that a lost kid would need to survive. And so I think religion in a lot of ways is such a trauma magnet, because so many of us that didn't have this sense of deep belonging in childhood get to feel like we're a part of something as long as we follow all the rules, as long as we go along with what we're taught. And there's such a fear in my personal religious conservative Christian upbringing around trusting yourself, because they're kind of telling the members, the congregants, the kids involved, like, if you begin to trust yourself, then it's just a slippery slope. You're not going to trust God. You're going to fall to your own flesh. You're going to go down a road where God is not. I mean, my dad used to say, people plan and God laughs. And what that taught me was that we are prone to wander is probably the best way to say it. But really the message was like, don't be sneaky. Don't be trying to just get your own way, do your own thing outside of God. What I have learned on this side of it, is first of all, how detrimental that you are sneaky message really is. And it's everywhere. Oh my goodness. As a side note, the more I've been talking about God on social media, the more my algorithm shows me a bunch of Christian content. And the underlying message of, I feel like every single piece of Christian content that I see is this message of like, don't be trying to get away with something. You need to be honest. Don't be trying to be sneaky. And that is, first of all, Christians tend to be so overly cautious. Most of the Christian creatives that I work with need so much permission to fail, to trust themselves, to trust how deeply loved they are, even if they don't know exactly what to do, to trust what lights them up. Like, they do not need the constant caution that I see coming through all of the Christian content that's out there. And I think the fear from Christians is that, well, if we give all this permission, then people are going to just burn their lives down. They're just going to self-destruct. And I would say people are already burning their lives down. People are already self-destructing. Some of the very people that are following all the rules that Christianity, or religion, I should say, is offering. That's not what I find. I find that when you work with, all of the clients that I've ever worked with are just these beautifully sensitive, excited, underneath the surface, like so passionate about something that if they were to follow through would not only be such a beautiful expression of who they are, but it would also be something that would serve the world around them. What we also know from childhood development is that well-loved children naturally grow up to serve the world around them. It's a natural desire, a natural impulse to contribute. And children that were resourced and supported, that lived in a sense of abundance and possibility, they are not naturally selfish. The selfishness that Christian pastors so often are trying to call out actually comes down to adults who were once little kids who did not have their needs met. What I find is that when you begin to teach people who they truly are as well-loved children of God, there is no need for selfishness because you recognize how connected to abundance you actually are. So that fear comes so much more from scarcity. And I think so much of those religious fears and cautions and cautionary tales come from just such a deep fear of danger and disconnection. And I think when you know how loved you are, that fear dissolves over time, and you recognize, like, I couldn't even imagine, nor would I ever want to do anything outside of my connection to God. He's just excited about my life as I am. He's just excited about the things that light me up as I am. They're not outside of him. They were placed there by him. And so when we talk about manifesting, there's so much fear around words like that when all they mean is to create. And, even just the idea that we could or would want to create something outside of him is something that I think we need to really, really challenge. And when we're talking about creating a vision for our life, this is something that a lot of people that I work with get really stuck on because they think like, well, am I just trying to manifest? I had Ella Hooper on my podcast last week. If you listen to it, another beautiful coach. She's a creativity coach or an artist. I'm sorry. She's a coach to creatives and artists, just like I am. And we were talking about like designing your life. And I remember telling her, I read a book once after, literally a lifetime of being a good Christian girl and reading only Christian books. Somebody had given me a book called You Are a Badass by Jen Sincero. And I just remember the stuff in that book absolutely lit me up, absolutely lit me up. And I felt so terrified. It was like reading this book that was literally so empowering, so encouraging, so warm, and really drawing out a part of me that I knew needed to be explored. And I was just terrified that I was going rogue, that I was being led astray. That's really one of the big fears, this idea that you are going to just be led astray. And I would say, first of all, there's the Bible verse, you can never be snatched out of the hand of God. But I think, honestly, the fruit of your life is the thing to measure any of this by. If you are getting more greedy, more self-destructive, more hurtful of other people, if you are actually finding yourself like coping in destructive ways and wanting to hurt people, then I still wouldn't call that being led astray, but I would say that that is not the fruit of a well-loved child. And that's not what happens when you begin to trust that God is wanting to sit next to you and help you move towards the version of you that you dream of becoming. So Ella had asked me, what was the terror about? And I said, the terror came from this fear that had been instilled in me since birth, that I was trying to go behind the back of God and take what I wanted. And that fear came from being raised in a really, really, really fearful culture and coming to understand myself as a sneaky kid who needed to be grateful with what she had, did not need to ask for more because that was selfish, and needed to figure out how to serve the church. And so when I began to notice like other things coming up in me, lighting me up, it was such a beautiful awakening. And it was also so, so, so terrifying. And I just remember, something that I practice and I have my kids practice is, what's the most loving and kind thing you can imagine God saying? And I, at the time I was actually in ministry school. So even more like confused than ever. And I felt the unworried presence of God anytime I would connect. And I felt him saying like, this is me. Like, where you're going is me. You haven't lost the plot. You haven't lost me. We're healing what's in the way. And, not, you probably know if you've listened to other podcasts, the journey that I went on through kind of deconstructing a lot of the religious upbringing that I had and never losing that connection that I had to God, to love itself. It was such an easy thing for me to fall back into anytime I felt like, oh my gosh, am I just completely lost? I would be like, wait, the Bible says that God is love. And that is a universally agreed upon idea. God is love. Jesus said, I am God. Jesus and God is love. Like, I believe in love. And therefore I believe in God. And I can never be snatched out of the hand of God. I had this sense that like I would never get to a point where I didn't believe that love existed. And I knew that God was love. So I felt like that connection was always there. But I had to just deconstruct so much of the upbringing and the beliefs that were kind of passed down to me. And I remember coming back around to church a few years later, which you may have heard my story. And they were singing a song and the line was, I thought I knew what love was, but it's better. It's better. And I cried buckets. It was like such a deep worship cry, which was so wild because I had always been on the stage leading worship since I was 15, watching people have these experiences. And I had them myself, but like this was such a deep understanding of like this whole time I was learning new things. I was like letting myself come alive with interests and passions and desires for different things than the church had kind of grown me up to think. And the whole time I felt like God was he had been leading me. And that day was just a confirmation. He's like, it was me the whole time. Like you didn't deconstruct love. you didn't walk away from love. You walked away from all of the unhelpful things that they told you love was. So coming back to this idea of manifesting and not being afraid of it, really, really not being afraid of it. I mean, the idea came from God. Like there are so many things. So even just the idea, there's a Bible verse that says, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So you have to understand that the brain is a prediction machine. It is constantly predicting what it thinks will happen, and what it thinks will happen determines how you feel in your body. So you think about like the placebo effect, how insane it is that people who are given a placebo are notice healing when they were told this thing will work. They will notice actual like the resolving of their symptoms and the actual healing to their bodies. Like there's so much science around this. I don't even think that I need to go into it. Maybe I should do a whole episode on this, but like, I think what you need to understand is like, there have been so many studies in neuroscience reviews and, peer-reviewed studies around this idea that like your perception is shaped as much by your expectation as by your actual sensory reality, meaning like what you think is going to happen and what you expect has to do with what your brain thinks is going to happen. So your reality, how you experience reality, is not just like what is actually real. It's what you expect to happen. So if you spend your entire life being told that you're sneaky, or like being told that you need to make sure you don't make sure that you're in the will of God over and over and over, which sort of assumes that like you might be led astray, or you might find a way to be outside of the will of God. The will of God is to be loved and to love. And there are millions of ways to express that kind of lifestyle, that purpose, that life. And so if your brain is constantly expecting that you're going to get in trouble or that you're going to be disconnected from him, then you are going to find that your brain's going to send you all kinds of warnings and fears when it senses that that might be happening. And they're very reasonable. I just had Sarah Baldwin on my podcast, and I will release that episode in October, but she was like, your brain is incredibly reasonable at talking you out of doing what it thinks might be dangerous. And to Christians, the most dangerous thing is being disconnected from God. And so there's so many Christian and so many creatives, really, when our world needs our healthy creative expression more than ever. There's so many of you that are so afraid to disappoint God or to be disconnected from him that you are denying the very expression that he is calling you to, because your brain is having a hard time differentiating between the two. And it has so much to do with self-trust. So when we talk about manifesting has to be based on an identity of a well-loved child of God, meaning when you know that you know how deeply loved you are, the things that you will begin to expect to happen will be more in line with who you know yourself to be and what you desire to create with your life. Again, knowing that what you desire to create with your life is naturally going to be an authentic expression of who you are, and it's naturally going to be something that contributes to those around you and serves those around you. That's not in question. So you're not afraid of being disconnected from God or from being selfish. And so when we're predicting that I am here to serve the world and to authentically express as myself, connected to abundance, to the resources of heaven, connected to the love of God, the way that our perception of reality shifts is that we start to notice opportunities. We start to be open to attention, to connection with the right people. We start to be in a ventral state in our nervous system, which allows our brain to think of creative solutions as opposed to constantly rehearsing fears. And that is the manifestation that we're talking about. Your cognitive bias means that reality feels different depending on what we expect or what we fear. So your brain wants to prove what it thinks is true. If you think that you are a sneaky kid, it is going to find ways to prove that to you absolutely constantly. If your brain thinks that you, at any moment and at any decision, could be outside of the will of God or disconnected from the love of God, it's actually going to alter your perception of reality to prove that that's true. You really need to know how important that is, because you're still manifesting. You're still creating a life, but it's just based on what you believe reality to be. So like, for example, if you think that nobody likes you, let's just say, what you're going to notice is all of the ways that people leave you out, or they talk about you, or they look at you weird, because your brain, especially if we're talking about a threat like people not liking you, that's a biological threat, because your body and brain want you to be in the tribe, not out of the tribe. Your brain will highlight and be hyper vigilant about anything that could mean that belief is true, and it will actually try and prove that it's true because it's trying to protect you. It's trying to say, oh my gosh, if it's possible that she could be left out, or she could, or people don't like her, we need to collect all the evidence of that being true, because then we'll be better able to prepare. It actually feels really scary, and also like a huge cognitive dissonance. If you deeply believe nobody likes me, and you start telling yourself like everyone likes me, there's going to be like such a long cognitive dissonant season, because your brain's like, no, that's not what you actually believe. And yet that is kind of the work that we're invited to do, but not in a toxic positivity way. We're not manifesting like, I just want $1 million. I want $1 million. I want $1 million. We're not trying to manifest like, I'm so popular. I'm so popular. I'm so popular. Like, that doesn't even make sense. That's not what a healthy kid would even do. What we're trying to say is, first of all, trusting what lights you up, I think, is a really beautiful place to start, because everybody has that sort of purity of passion, something that won't let you go since you were a kid, something that you naturally do well. Everybody has that. So like for, let's say somebody wants to write a book, and they've always wanted to be an author. They've always wanted to write a book. They've always had stories in them that they want to share. If they're wanting to manifest that reality, if they're wanting to actually have that dream materialize, which is what we're talking about when we're talking about manifesting, what I love about trusting those things that light you up, that won't let you go, is that they will almost immediately show you what needs to be healed that's in the way of you being the person that would write a book. So like, if you want to write a book and you go to sit down and you just have such a hard time doing it, well, then we would look at the different parts of you and what they think. And every single time I'm sitting with somebody who wants to do something like that, it's like, I'm afraid what people will think. What if nobody buys it? And then I feel so rejected. I can't handle it. What if everybody buys it and then they all know my story and then they want too much of me and then I crash? What if I'm not good at this? And those are all just these pieces, these parts of you that need attention and soothing and love, just like a good parent would do for their kids. That's the work that we're invited to when we are pursuing our dreams. And then what happens is, the more that you heal those parts of you, the more that you begin to become the person that you were always meant to be, the author, let's just say. And when you write that book, you have nothing to prove, nothing to defend, nothing to lose. It's just an authentic expression of who you are. And authentic expressions always inspire the people that they're meant to inspire. And they always serve the way that they're meant to. And it's not really any of your business, how big of an impact it's going to have. You just get to be your authentic self, doing your authentic thing. And yes, you can be strategic with impact. I'm not saying like you shouldn't want people to engage with your work, because that's beautiful. I'm just saying it's not to prove that you are special or that you're right or that you're good. So that would be a great example of manifesting, like healing what's in the way of you actually putting out into the world the dreams that have never left you alone, that you're here to create. And so if any of you guys are feeling like, oh, I do want to say, actually, if you're in a place where you're moving towards manifestation, I would say you're moving towards any dream, making real the things that are in your heart. That's the definition of manifestation. If you're creating anything and you're moving towards it and you're like, I've always wanted to do this, what can happen for a lot of people is they're like, I don't know my whole vision, but I know this is my next right step. That is beautiful. That is perfectly okay for you to know the next thing that you want to pursue. And it's okay to get to that thing and be like, oh, this a great example of this is we did not know at all what our vision was for our life, but we knew that our next step was for me to go to ministry school. So we moved our family, and it was a shit show. It was so hard. There were so many things that I had to unlearn. There were beautiful, beautiful people and amazing relationships and friendships, but it just ended up being a really painful, hard season. But man, did I get what I needed out of that. Enough to know that that wasn't the place that I was made to stay. Enough to know that ministry was not supposed to be my entire life. But had I not followed that rabbit trail, I never would have gotten to the place that I was supposed to go to. So I'm not saying that any step needs to be necessarily crazy and painful and a shit show, but I am just saying it's okay to not know the big vision, but to know the next thing. Because that will always give you sort of the next directive, if that makes sense. That will always show you the next thing, or it will show you this is exactly where I was supposed to be this whole time, and this feels exactly right, and this is what I want to do with my life. So that fear that you have of falling into some path that's going to take you from God is not based in the kind of relationship that you are invited to have with God. And a well-loved child does not worry that they're accidentally going to run away. My kid knows the difference between me and a creeper on the street. I don't have to constantly tell them, don't be led astray. Don't, stranger danger. Like, don't, maybe when they were very young, but even then they knew the difference between me and a stranger. Absolutely did. And the thing now, especially as my son's in high school, I'm not trying to warn him of all of the playground equipment he could fall off of, or like the people in the world that are going to hurt him. I'm trying to give him this message of like, you have what it takes to do what you're here to do, and we will be here. And yes, if you want to know what to look out for, if you need to go over that again, that's okay. But mostly, you've got this. Like, how can we help you? How can we support you? What can we do? And how can we help you create a life that is based on your authentic self, and that is aware of the hurting world around you that needs your regulated, authentic expression? And that's what I think of when I think of manifestation. Besides, honestly, like I said, the science around it, the science around the way that you perceive reality affecting how reality shows up for you, just neuroplasticity, like the way we focus attention sculpts how we perceive and experience reality. Like, that's all true, and it's worth a deep dive if you're interested. We don't see the world as it is. We see the world as we are, as Richard Rohr says, and your belief and attention matter. When you direct your focus, your fear, your gratitude, your faith, your stress, it reshapes both brain wiring and perception of reality, which is how your world around you is really built. I mean, disempowered people do find themselves trapped in situations. People that feel deeply powerful, loved, blessed, and supported do find themselves in these incredible opportunities all the time. And if you are working on becoming shifting and healing your identity, and you're working on moving towards the dreams that you have, and you're not noticing relationships and opportunities lining up with your new identity, be patient. You have time. If you're not manifesting the life that you have in your heart to build, there's nothing wrong with you. Everything is just information. Everything is just showing you what is needing your attention. And it took me a really long time to love everything that came up and to really understand this pattern of like, we have a goal. We heal what's in the way of the goal. We face obstacles. We face pain. And then we get to a point where we are living on the other side of that goal realized. That's what manifesting is. It's the power of that God gives to his children to affect and heal and change the world around you. Fearful, highly cautious, small people that aren't living in the fullness of their identity are still so worthy. They're still so loved, but they aren't changing the world. And I believe right now more than ever, we need well-loved children of God in their authentic expression. I'm a broken record. As usual, these solo episodes are very much me repeating myself over and over again, but please let me know what you think. I actually got a message from this podcast episode is based on a DM that I got from just this beloved member of this community who is like genuinely concerned. Like, it sounds so great to design my life, but I don't know if I need to check with God. Do I need to wait for signs? And I would say, if you're worried about checking with God or waiting for signs, then that would actually point more to your insecure attachment that you probably learned in childhood. And it was probably reinforced in your religion that, you need to be afraid. And nothing to do with the desires that God put in your heart. So we heal that attachment. We heal that little kid in you, making sure he feels so, or she feels so deeply loved and connected to God that they feel safe to play and to create. That's what I got for you guys. Next week, stay tuned. I have Mr. James Burke on the podcast with me. And if you don't know him, oh man, he's one of my favorites. And we're going to talk more about pursuing what lights you up. And he's got some really amazing things to say. So I love you. I really love everything that we're doing here. If you guys ever have any questions, please email me, courtneyandheart.com. No, Courtney at courtneyandheart.com. I don't know why. I have like 6 email addresses and I always get them confused. Courtney at courtneyandheart.com. Or you can DM me on Instagram. I love you guys and I hope you have such a beautiful weekend.